people, welcome back to the SCOPO Series is Indonesia Today to develop CCS or CCUS. I'm Nicole and my friend Sarah, hi, as the host of this podcast. Okay, Sarah, before we will be discussing this topic, let's explain about our special guest for today's podcast.
Alright, we will be discussing this topic with the Director of Indonesia and Regional CCS Strategic Initiative, Indonesia CCS Center. She is a special advisor for coordinating ministry and as upstream oil and gas business development. Without any further ado, please welcome our special guest, Mba Diofanny Swandrina Putri. Hi, Mba.
Hello, good morning.
Okay, how are you doing, Mba Diofanny?
I'm pretty much well and alive right now, and it's a kind of like busy week, but I'm really glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time and your willingness to share knowledge, Mba.
Okay, Mba, first of all, we are very welcome to have you here. Thank you for coming. And maybe could you please tell us a little bit about your current position, actually as a director of Indonesia and Regional CCS Strategic?
Okay, it's quite a long story, but I'm trying to put it in a very short manner. So currently, Indonesia CCS Center is a non-profit think tank organization. So we kind of like being a promoter for Indonesia to be the CCS hub regional. So basically, me as the director of the strategic initiative, acting as the kind of like brand ambassador kind of thing, because we do have many hands to work with. The first one, we work with the government. We help them and support them to kind of like giving them the advice if they want to launch a decree regarding the CCS. And then our second hand, we work with the regional partner and international partner because we want to have a full understanding about CCS that can be implemented in Indonesia. So we work with the other governments from Japan, from South Korea, from Canada, from UK, from Australia and anywhere else in the world. And we also work with international partners such as World Bank. We work with the United Nations as well. We work with the Global CCS Institute. And then the last hand of our hands, we work with the industrial. So we work with the whole value chain of the CCS, from the capture part and then from the transportation part, as well as the injector part. So we work with kind of like we call them our corporate membership. We work with the Pertamina, BP, Exxon, Chevron, Impacts, and the transportation part. We work with the Pertamina International Shipping, PGN, and the injector and the capture part. Of course, we work with the PLN, Pupuk, and everything. So yeah, basically, I as the director of the strategic initiative has to tailor all of the stakeholders in order to make things happen to make Indonesia as the CCS hub regional. Yeah.
Wow, amazing. That's such a really great, and we are hope to be like you someday.
I mean.
Okay, you tell us about your position, right, Mba? Maybe there are still a few people who are unfamiliar about the CCS or CCUS. Could you tell us maybe about what is CCS or CCUS and what is the difference?
Okay, so the first one, if you talk about CCS, I will try to kind of like imagine the CCS process in a very general way. So if you do the Korean barbecue thingy, right? So we grill the meat, right? And then they will produce the smoke. So the smoke itself will be exhausted by the exhaust itself, and then it's captured by the exhaust. So basically, CCS is a very simple terms. It is literally carbon capture and storage. So the smoke or the emission is captured by the exhaust itself, and then transported, and then injected to the storage area, right? So there will be three main value chain of the CCS. The first one is capture, the second one is transportation, and the third one or the last one is the injection. And the capture part, there are two types of the processes. The first one is we capture the emission direct in one point sources. We capture it all over industry that is called hard to abate sector. It can be from the power plant, it can be from the petrochemical sectors, from cement, from iron, from steel and everything. But it has to be like from one sources. And the second one, we call it direct air capture. So it will be capture the emission direct from the atmosphere. Imagine that we do have, Bundaran HI, right? So we put a trailer there, and that trailer we capture directly from the atmosphere. It's kind of like two different things in the capture value chain. One point source that I've mentioned before, direct from the industrial, and then the direct air capture is from the atmosphere. So that one, the first one, the capture. And the second one, as I said, is transportation. So the emission after they capture it, the one point source or direct air capture, they will be transported either by pipeline or shipping. So we can do it pipeline if it's onshore, but if we want to inject the emission somewhere in the offshore, we need transportation, right? And we need shipping. So then we call it transportation. And after that, once the emission reach the point where it can be injected, then the third value chain will be occurred. It's called injection part. The injection part, we can store the emission into two main types. It's actually more than two types of the reservoir. The first one is depleted oil and gas reservoir, and the second one we call it saline aquifer. So it's below, even below the depleted reservoir. So basically, we will inject the emission far down there in the subsurface of the earth, like more than 1 kilometers. So imagine that we do have Monas. I believe it kind of like, if we compare the depth of the subsurface when we inject it, it's kind of like 9 times of Monas down there. So it's very deep, so you don't have to worry about leakage or everything because it's so deep. So basically, that's the CCS. Sorry if I took too long to explain that, but I try to explain it in a very general way. And if we say the CCUS, that will be utilization part in that. So the carbon that has been captured can be utilized to anything. The first one, if we're familiar with the petroleum industry. So the utilization in the petroleum industry is basically for enhanced oil recovery or enhanced gas recovery. So we use the carbon dioxide to actually help or support the depleted reservoir to produce more oil and gas. So kind of like the differences is only the utilization. So we can use the carbon that has been captured for expanding the time frame of the field oil and gas itself. So yeah, that's the CCS and CCS differences.
Okay, so basically the difference between CCS and CCUS is the utilization.
Yeah.
When the CCS is only like a capture, storage, in between there are like transportation, right? And the CCUS have the utilization in petroleum industry. We would say that EOR or enhanced oil recovery factor.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe the CCS and CCUS themselves is like the main reason of it is like the capturing the carbon that in our atmosphere. Okay, so maybe like we can move on to the next questions maybe.
Sure.
Okay, like you said before that we don't have to worry about the leakage or something, but do you think that CCS or CCUS have any risk in environmental, and what do you think?
Okay, I would be lying if there is no risk at all, like 0% risk. There would be no such thing. But I read one paper from Oxford University in UK. So they had kind of like conducted a research regarding the leakage that might be happen underground. So they did the research based on two types of the reservoir of the layers that can be stored. The first one is the saline aquifer and the depleted oil and gas reservoir. And they did the research for knowing is it going to be a leakage for the next 100 years after we store it. And the result is they might be a leakage kind of like possibility to leak, but it only will be occurring below like 0.070%. So the leakage, not opportunity, probability to leak is actually lower than 1% if we do it correctly. Because when we do the CCS, we have to follow the international rules, right? So we do have kind of like, we call it ISO, International Standard Operations. We do have VERA. There are a lot of standardization to do the CCS thingy. So if we do it correctly, the probability to leak is below 1%, if it is even below 0.0%. If we want to capture it more than 100 years, right? So that is one thing, it based on the research that has been conducted by the Oxford University. And the second one, the leakage itself can be happening actually from 3 points. The first one, when we inject it in the wellhead, and then it can be occurred during the transportation in the well itself, in the well casing. And after that, the probability of leakage can be happening in the subsurface. And all of them, we have to do it based on the international standard. And I would say, as I mentioned before, that we will inject it, the emission like more than 1 kilometers down there. And if you say that carbon dioxide is kind of like toxic, and it's not toxic at all. If we compare it, the carbon dioxide itself with the LNG, LPG, and other liquids of the petroleum products is actually probably the safest one. So you don't have to worry, like it won't explode. It won't, at certain point, yeah, of course, if we do have like more than 90% of concentration of CO2, it might be harm, but we cannot have that in this CCS value chain. So that's why we have to keep it a very safe operation. And this CCS is actually has been happening in the other part of the world, in the Canada, in US, in UK, since 1970 something. So it's actually not a rocket science. And they proved that CCS is safe because they are no leakage from their operation. One of the oldest field that has been injected CO2 is from Norwegia. It's called Sleipner project and 𝗦𝗣𝗘ople project. They had stored more than 1 million tons CO2 in the subsurface since 1962, 66, around that. And until now, it's more than 30 years that there will be no leakage, such thing. So yeah, I would be lying if I say that there's zero risk, but we can prevent that by following the rules from the international standards and everything that has been done before we do the CCS. It's the same process when we do the petroleum industry thingy, the oil and gas upstream thingy. Even all of the business that will require kind of like sophisticated technology, we do have standardization and we have to follow that. So it's exactly the same thing that we want to reduce risk and everything that could happen.
Okay, but I'm a little curious about this because I found in my feed Instagram about CCUS and CCS. It's about like some new technology, right? Can you explain me when Indonesia used this technology, especially like the year like that?
When Indonesia will implement this. So even though this is not a rocket science, as I said, it's like 30 or 40 years science that has been proved. But in Indonesia, the technology itself has been there. So the oil and gas upstream industry has been using this technology probably far more than 20 years, because when we produce oil and gas, they will be captured the CO2, and instead of storing it, they will flare it. So now, instead of flare the emissions, we have to inject it. So the technology of capture itself is already there, but storing itself, it's still kind of like in the middle of the process to do that, right? And if you ask when, the timeline is kind of like, currently in 2023 and 2024, the CCS is a very young stage, kind of. I would say CCS is a baby. I really like to say that because no one will do this thing because of several reasons. because of the high cost thingy, because of the environmental thing and everything. But because of that, but we need to actually help Indonesia to reach their net zero emission targets, and CCS will be one of them. And in this current stage, 2020 and 2024, we now kind of like getting ready in nation or in Indonesia perspective. We prepare the regulation first, because unfortunately in Indonesia, if you want to do a new business, so we call it CCS, a new emerging industry, we have to have a proper regulation first, because the investor don't want to do anything if there's no regulation in Indonesia. That is why in this current stage, in baby stage, we getting ready on the regulation first. While we're getting ready in the regulation first, us, Indonesia CCS Center, also pushing the industry to actually getting ready as well for the preparation of the technicality. Like they have to prepare calculating how much the storage that we have, and then prepare when they will do the injection, the drilling of the exploration wells, and then drilling the injection wells and everything. So we kind of like want industry to be ready. But fortunately, if we're talking about the CCS first, there are two main area that is kind of like ready to be implemented to CCS. The other one is in the eastern part of Indonesia, in BP Tangguh, and the second one is in Sunda Asri Basin. It's Pertamina and Exxon. So these two area is actually the most ready one to implement the CCS, because in BP they already approved the FID to do the CCS in 2027. And then the Pertamina and Exxon, they are getting ready to do the CCS by 2030, because the market driven from the Singapore is ready to kind of like send their CO2 to Sunda Asri Basin. So that's the timeline. We're getting ready with the regulation, and then in the execution part, we're also getting ready for the industry.
Okay, so we can that CCS is such a newborn.
Yeah, kind of thing like that. Yeah.
Okay, I'm a little bit curious about this one thing about this Mba. We'll talk about its influence on the economy in Indonesia itself. Could CCS and CCUS boost Indonesia's competitiveness in the global energy market?
Okay. This is a kind of like interesting questions. Because this is a new thing, and I think in Southeast Asia we kind of lead this technology. So FYI, it's not only Indonesia that wants to be the CCS hub regional. Malaysia, Timor-Leste, and Thailand, they also want to be the CCS hub regional. So we kind of like probably treat this as a competition in a way, right? So if we don't win kind of thing, so probably we lose the opportunity of the investment, right? So that this is the reason that kept me to, I have to do this, because we don't want to lose the opportunity, right, with the other countries. And if you talk about the opportunity about the economical advantage of Indonesia, there will be a lot of it. Like if we do and we can create this new emerging industry, the first one, we can create the job opportunities. We calculated that probably more than 170,000 jobs creation that will be taken in place if the CCS will be conducted in Indonesia. It's one hub only, but if we can do 5 hubs of the CCS, so times 5. Right, this is the first one. And the second one, we can invite so many investment because, as I explained, CCS is kind of like niche industry because it's involved capture, transport, and injector, right? So if we calculate all of them, the value chain, the investment will be enormous. Like we can invest in capture, we can invest in transportation, we can invest in injection part. So the investment probably more than 20 trillion rupiahs and everything each year. That's the second thing. And the third thing is all about the carbon credits and carbon markets. Currently, the carbon markets globally is more than 1 trillion investment in the future by the 2050, and we can grab some of them if we actually can make success happen. Because it obviously contains the carbon in the name, so we can actually kind of like how do I say it, play an important role in carbon market, because one of the problem of the carbon industry, probably you've heard this before, it's kind of like greenwashing, but the greenwashing we're talking about is based on the nature-based solution thingy. But the CCS, we call it an engineered-based solutions. And when we do CCS, we can measure from the capture part, from the transportation part, and the injection part. So the quality of the carbon will be the highest quality. And that's why in the carbon market, we hope we can sell the carbon trading or carbon markets from the CCS with the highest premium quality. So there are three things that actually probably the most general thing that can we gather and can we optimize if we do the CCS in Indonesia. So there will be a lot of things that can be happen, and we also calculated that CCS might help Indonesia to increase their GDP, our GDP, by 0.8 until 1% of GDP. You know, this is aligned with our current cabinet government target to actually help Indonesia to be one of the greatest country that has a high GDP in the next probably 25 years.
Okay, so maybe CCS or CCUS themselves can help Indonesia to achieve net zero emissions, and also will increase our GDP. So I want to ask about, does Indonesia like what do we call like geographical in Indonesia is suitable to storage like a large amount of carbon that are captured, besides the you have mentioned before the 2 wells that are ready to be implemented CCS in Indonesia. Okay.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for bringing this one, because it's such a. This is actually the most important competitive advantage of Indonesia.
Yeah.
Why we want to be the CCS regional, right? Because the first reason is we do have fast storage capacity. We do have more than around 600 gigatons storage capacity. So to make it clear how big is 600 gigatons, right? So the 600 gigatons is contained the 2 layers, right? The depleted oil gas reservoir and the saline aquifer. So currently in this year, Indonesia is emitting more than 600,000 tons CO2, right? So if we do a simple math, like we do have the storage 600 gigatons divided by our current emissions, we actually can gather more than 1,000 years of CO2 if we do it for our country only, right? So it's kind of like 1,000 years. So what we are going to do with that? It's an enormous amount. So I would say probably we are the third country that has the largest capacity of the storage. The first one is obviously the US, the second one is China, and the third one is us. That is why if you say that if we have the opportunity and the advantage in the storage capacity, we do have it. And this particular reasons is actually kind of like seeking all of the other countries' attention. They really like, really Indonesia has that much amount of the storage capacity? Oh, you have to use that. You have to monetize that, because they can see the value of it. You know, instead of, because it's only like it's been there. It's kind of like blessing. We have it underground, so if we don't do it anyway, it will be there, right? So if you want to monetize that, if you want to make a value out of it, if you want to help Indonesia to be like one of the greatest countries that can actually using their resources to be one of the global South leaders in carbon market, in carbon business, so use it. So yeah, that is why this is the reason I keep promoting Indonesia here and there, in Europe, in Australia, and US. I keep saying that Indonesia has this huge amount of the carbon storage, and then they will like, oh really? And that is why they kind of like getting the attention to kind of like trying to invest in Indonesia, and they want to help us to create and building this new emerging industry. Yeah.
Wow, that's really, really big. Okay, we move to the next question, maybe. move to technology and innovation. We know that in Indonesia itself, the development and innovation related to technology are always experiencing, and the question is, can CCS and CCUS work in energy with Indonesia's renewable energy initiative?
Okay, it's a long way to answer this. Probably like starting to explain that we're currently in an energy transition era, right? So if you're talking about the renewable energies, we are going there obviously, because in our government plan, it has been stated that we have to reach this certain amount of renewable energy by 2050, because we want to help Indonesia to reach their net zero emission targets, right? But we have to realize that we currently in the energy transition era. We cannot like switch just by one clap and one blink of an eye to move from the fossil fuel to the renewable energy. I myself, in my opinion, I really want to just switching to renewable energies, because I've done with this emission with Jakarta with the pollution and everything. I don't like it, right? No one like the pollution. So in my personal opinion, I really want to do it. But if we come to the realizations, we have to know that we cannot do it in one snap. So that's why we have to play in a role in the energy transition. So CCS will help in the energy transition, while in fact we still need fossil fuel, the coal, the oil, and the gas, but we want to do it with responsibility, right? So if we don't do it with responsible, so what's the meaning of the net zero emission, right? So CCS will help it, because while we still in the energy transition towards using the renewable energy, CCS will play an important role to reduce the emission from the fossil fuel energy. So it's kind of like symbiosis mutualism, I would say. So while we're reaching to that part of the renewable era, in this energy transition, CCS will help. And actually, even though we are still going to use the renewable energy such as biomass, the biomass itself still burning some emissions. So if it's still burning some emissions, we have to capture it still. If we want to create a very clean world, I would say, a very net zero emission thing. So the biomass itself, even though it's renewable energy and everything, we still have to do the CCS. So we're starting from the energy transition era, and if we reach the renewable era, we still need the CCS. So it's kind of like complementing each other. So we don't want to say that CCS the only options. No, it is not. We really need CCS because it's kind of like complementing the other options of decarbonization. We have to do solar, we have to do wind, we have to do electrification, we have to do everything that can reach net zero emission, and CCS is one of them, because it has been calculated and it has been stated by the IPCC and by other international organizations that if we couldn't do the CCS, we're actually losing 8 to 11% of the carbon dioxide still emitting in this world. So that's why we have to do the CCS. So I would say that CCS will be working hand in hand with the other decarbonization strategies, and it will be good to actually realizing our energy transition, especially in Indonesia, because we do have like abundant resources of the fossil fuel, but we also want to kind of like joining our hands to implement the renewable as well. Yeah.
Okay, maybe we're talking about the timing and urgency of CCS or CCUS in Indonesia. Like you have mentioned before, Indonesia is like have regulations in Indonesia about CCS or CCUS, so it makes us like having a competitiveness in many countries in Southeast Asia, right? And do you think that Indonesia have something to do to catch up with many countries out of Southeast Asia, of course? What do you think?
Okay, in order to make it happen, I think we have to keep running. So actually, as I mentioned before, we are leading in terms of regulation, because the other country doesn't have the regulation in place for CCS. Malaysia doesn't have it, Malaysia doesn't have it, Thailand doesn't have it. But actually, Japan just launched their act last May after we launched our presidential regulation. But it's kind of like their country is not our competitor. So kind of like it's complementing our presidential regulation. So it was perfect for them to actually launch the act. So if we compare with the other competitors, with the other countries, I would say we have to keep running, because even though we are ready in terms of regulation, we have to make it, like we have to execute it. I would say in my personal opinion that the other countries is actually more like an executor rather than the conceptor, because we do have the concept. Indonesia is like we do have this roadmap collaboration with World Bank. So Indonesia CCS Center worked with World Bank to create the CCS roadmap for Indonesia, the first CCS roadmap, and we kind of like glad that we have this roadmap, because we have the concept, we have the timeline in short term, in mid term, and in long term what we are going to do, right? But if we compare with the other nations, they kind of like doing the execution first, and they will working for the regulation. And this one we kind of like a bit behind if we're talking about the execution. So if we want to make it happen, we have to keep running in terms of the regulation itself. We have to do, because the presidential regulation is not enough. We have to derive others regulation below the presidential decree. We have to have the kind of like ministerial decree from the energy and mineral resources. We have to have the decree from the industrial ministry, from the investment ministry, from the other ministry that is related to the CCS value chain. We have to have all of the regulation in place. But we don't want to make it complicated, so the investor will be like, oh, Indonesia is so complicated, they have a lot of regulations. We don't want to do that, but we want to make a regulation that capture all of the things and make investment easier. So that's the first one. And we have to keep running on the execution as well. Even though we kind of like ready in the eastern part and western part of Indonesia, but somehow because of the kind of like this environment that's not ready yet, they kind of like lagging behind our competitors. So in Malaysia, for example, their infrastructure is more ready than us. They have this kind of 2 or 3 hubs that actually can and will be kicking off probably in the next 2 or 3 years. Meanwhile, Indonesia, if we're talking about the execution, we are ready probably by 2030, in which 5 or 6 years ahead. That is why we have to keep running on the execution part. So it's kind of like a very funny way to say that we're not we're having this competition, but we're leading, but we have to keep running. So it's kind of like trying to have the regulation in place together with the industrial readiness is a very I would say hard way to do, but I think we can do it if we compare with the other nations.
Okay, so Indonesia will have the special, like it's a special gift, yeah.
Kind of thing, yeah. Other than we do have the storage capacity, and and unfortunately the government is very supportive, I would say. You know, last November, while President Prabowo met the Singaporean government, they specifically talk about the CCS, because we want to do CCS cross-border with Singapore. And then in G20, Pak Hashim also mentioned that Indonesia is ready to be one of the leaders for the carbon capture storage. So it's kind of like it's really happening, you know. If you recalled on the second debate of the Vice President, so Pak Gibran mentioned about the CCS. So Pak Gibran asked about the CCS. At that time, I was like, what is happening? Why Pak Gibran mentioned CCS? And I was like, everyone kept texting me, what? Gibran mentioned that, Gibran mentioned this. And I was like, yeah, I don't know about this, but it's kind of like a very good thing, because he actually noticed one of the new emerging industry that could help Indonesia to actually increasing the GDP. And I was so happy, and I was like, oh my god, this is actually happening. And that is why and then after the president elected, and he kept saying that CCS is one of the important thing, and then also It has been mentioned in G20 and everything, so it gives me hope. Like, okay, we can do this, and we have to do this. It's kind of like keep me going to make this success happening in Indonesia.
Yeah, such a good thing. Okay, Mba Diofanny, maybe today's podcast was really awesome and give us a knowledge. Before we close our season, maybe would you give us maybe some words to cheer us up to pursue our dreams to be like you?
Okay, well, it has to be related to CCS, or it's kind of like a personal advice for you guys.
Personal advice,
Like your personal advice, I would say, if you want to make it, give it 100% of you, even more than 100% of you for everything. I just realized that even though you don't like what you're doing right now, but if you keep on giving more than 100% of it, someday it will be getting noticed. It will be paid off. I wouldn't say that I have a very good career path. I wouldn't say that, because there's time that I don't like my jobs. Like, I really don't want to do this. Like, I don't want to. I really want to do more than this. I'm not like kind of like having this doubt in myself that I can do much better than this one. But because that thing happening in my thought, and I was like, okay, I have to give it 100% so that I can do anything else, and I can learn anything else that can actually satisfy myself to be to do more than this, right? So one of the things that I learned, if we do everything more than 100% of ourselves, we do better than anyone else, and we kept on being innovative and being collaborative and being positive. This actually will be my second advice for you. So the first one is giving you 100%, and the second one, please being so positive. Positivity will attract more positivity. So even though you feel like kind of like, I don't want to do this, but you cannot show it. Okay, I don't want to do this, but I have to keep my positivity. Because if you keep the positivity in yourself, so you will be kind of like giving the positivity to the others. And when you give the positivity to the others, the positivity will attract you. So and this is one of the things that possibly one of the reasons why I get the chance to be one of the CCS team, because I think this is one of probably because of my positivity, right? Yeah. Because I really want to do something more. Like, I can do much more than this. I want to make impact for community. I want to make impact for Indonesia. I don't want just to sit and I don't know do my laptop thingy and running Excel, running PowerPoint and everything. It's a good thing to do. It has to be started that way, but I want more. So when you feel that you want to do more, you give 100%, keeping your positivity attitude, being agile and everything, because I would say in this era, you have to be agile. You cannot just stay. You cannot just stay still and I don't know. I just want to do my thing. No, you cannot say that. You have to be so collaborative and agile in order to make things happen, right? So you have to work with the your coworkers. You have to have the ability to talk with the older people. It's you have to have the skills for that, for sure. I would say. The funny thing is, this is my personal experiences. Every time I have to talk or being a speaker or panelist in a very big conference, such as in UK or the US, I have to mention that I am old. Because sometimes they would take me for granted. They would say that, okay, they have that look. They don't believe me that I am the expert or I am experienced enough. So I have to say that I'm sorry, you guys. I know that I look like a fresh graduate, but I'm actually not. I have more than 10 or 15 years experience and this and blah 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 and everything. And just because my face is like this is an Asian blessing in disguise. So you see me is a very young woman, but actually I am not. I'm more than 32 years old and everything. And I have to mention that. Because if I don't say that, they wouldn't believe me. They wouldn't. It's kind of sad, right? And then especially, I don't know, it's kind of like Asian culture, but hopefully it won't be happening in the next future, because I don't want to make this kind of thing a problem for you guys, for the women, for the younger. If they want to talk in a very big conference, they have to mention that I don't want it you guys to experience this way. So that's one of the things that you have to learn as well. So the first one, please, kind of like you have to be, what was I saying? I forgot the first one.
It's like you have to.
Oh, giving 100%.
Giving
Yeah,
100%.
giving 100% on everything, and then you have to keep your positivity, and you have to be a child. You know, you guys are awesome to make this happen. You know, this podcast is actually I'm really happy to be here. I'm very glad that you guys can catch the opportunity of the CCS. And I know that you probably want to learn more about this, and then it doesn't have to be CCS. It can do in anything else. But if you think that this one has a huge opportunity, then do it. When you heard say so, and when you're trying on yourself that I can give much more and can give impact and being positive, so the rest will come. The rest will be followed. Don't worry about that. Okay.
But honestly, that was my first impression of you, Mba. Like,
Really?
you're really young and beautiful. I don't know what to say. Like,
Yeah, I'm old. Oh, believe me, I'm old.
Okay, alright. Thank you both for your time. Once again, we are very happy to have you here to be talking CCS, CCUS, or like ACT Indonesia's will make it or something like that. And I hope you the best to your work or everything for CCS, CCUS in Indonesia and kind of the things about that. Okay, so I also want to thank to our listeners to this podcast, and we will see you guys in the next maybe if this SCOPO has like many series of that. Okay.
see you on our next SCOPO series.
Thank you, everyone, for having
Have a
me.
good
Thank you.
Thank you.